Caring for art materials is a constant struggle in the art room. Don't tell me you've never had paint that looks like this. But demonstrating proper techniques and cleanliness is essential for maintaining the life of your materials. So let's talk about how I give a basic demonstration to my students when they start painting. So the two main ones I'm going to go over today are about the tempera cakes and the actual liquid tempera. And I'll talk a little bit more about the storage system later as well. But these are the two that we use most commonly in my classroom. And there are a few special things that I remind my students of so that we can keep our materials respected and also just keep them clean for every class that comes in afterwards. So I'm going to show you a few other special techniques that you can try, but first let's just talk about the basic demonstration that I give to my students. So if I'm using tempera cakes, again, one of the benefits here is that I have a lot of options to paint with, but it can be tricky because students can be tempted to have a messy brush and then make the entire tempera cake really messy. So for this particular type of project or type of material, I'll always remind them that we're looking at the motion circle, circle, circle. So we're not kind of swiping and going all over our palette, but we're doing a circle, circle, circle. Now, one of my favorite techniques when I'm teaching students is to select a teacher to remind the class what I just told them. So I'll say, all right, friends, our motion is circle, circle, circle. What's our motion again? Who can teach our class? And I'll select a student to remind us it's circle, circle, circle on our paper. Then I'll paint a little bit for them and show them that we want to make sure that our paint doesn't get too dry, that we're using more paint and less water so it's not making a huge, huge puddle, and that we're just trying to kind of neatly brush with a tiptoe on our paper and not smash the hairdo. So we want to respect the hairdo of our brush. Then when it's time to switch colors, that's when we use our water cup and we do a little dance party. So sometimes I'll demonstrate with a clear glass jar and show them how you need to actually mash the bristles on the bottom of the cup, and that's going to make sure that the paint actually releases from the bristles. So I'll show them that we need to do a little dance party in the water cup, and then they're going to just brush the edge of the cup, because personally, the tap, 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 and paint and water flying everywhere can get a little bit irritating if you have a lot of friends painting at one time. So just a little gentle brush along the edge is going to take care of the water. We have a clean brush and we can pick the next color. Again, circle, 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 and then we're going to paint our next color. So I'll demonstrate this for students, remembering to to pull the brush and not push it forward and ruin that hairdo, but just to gently kind of pull. Again, teaching those students to remind your class what kind of techniques and things we need to work on as our class. I would say, all right, friends, who can teach us what do we need to do next? And I'll call in a quiet friend to remind us we need to do a little dance party in between our water cups, in between colors, so that we're ready to go with the next color. So again, keeping that hairdo nice and neat, doing a little tiptoe on your paper, and then also just kind of using that dance party technique to have clean water in between colors. So that works pretty well for the tempera paints, but I always want to remind them, if you want to mix colors, mix on your paper. Because again, I can't tell you how many times I've had black in every single one of these. Luckily, tempera cakes are really easy to clean, and you can just wash them under the water and sponge them off, and they're clean for the next class. The other kind of demonstration that I give my students is about the liquid tempera. So for this type of material, I always remind them everything is already pre-mixed, we're good to go, but if they want to mix on their paper again, that's totally fine. So they're gonna make sure they have a clean brush again, try to paint gently the edge of the cup instead of tap, 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 and then just dip for a color they want to use. And I can always remind them about how they might be able to get thick or thin lines with their brush. Remember to tiptoe on your paper, and then of course do that little dance party in between for different colors. So most of the techniques are the same, but it's important to remind them how they only need to dip. It's not a scoop of the paint as compared to the circle, circle, circle for the tempera cakes. So it's kind of fun to make your own language that you'd like to use for your students and take that to a level that they can understand. So we have a few techniques here that are really fun to try with tempera, so I want to show you just a few of them. The first one is stamping, and like I said, I have so many stamping materials in my classroom that I love to use, set out all over the tables and let students just experiment with what kinds of techniques they can get. but you can also hone in a few specifics for some projects. So of course, this is a half-finished teacher example because you know how an art classroom is, but I've used big, huge circle cups and printed these big circle bodies for these silly birds, and then done some half prints for the eyes, kind of give it a little wheelie, and then some smaller circles here and marker caps for these silly little birds. So you can use stamping techniques with some of the things you might already have in your classroom, or these koi fish, these little lily pads are actually just stamped, cut green peppers. So we just cut those into little slices and then dunk them in black paint and then use those. Now, of course, be considerate if you are working with students that are low income to not use food in an inappropriate way that would maybe make them feel that they don't have access to food. So make sure that you're being considerate, knowing your population of your students. So stamping is a really fun thing to practice. I also really like doing these little collagraphs, and this is just using yarn, but we use tempera with rollers to roll onto our paper. And this is a little self-portrait, printed it a few times because we can get multiple prints out of it. And then we can just cut apart the pieces that we want to have as colors on our final print and just layer them over the top. So this kind of collagraph can be really fun, and you can do multiple colors of tempera or just keep it simple with just one. You might also want to try some painted paper collage, again, using that paste paper technique if you like the way that looks. You can also try underpainting and doing some colors beneath and then using some mediums or different kinds of painted techniques on top. Monoprinting is really fun, whether it's on jelly plates or on wood or even just on your tabletop. You can do your monoprinting there and then get all sorts of different prints for students to use. You can also try sgraffito, and that's similar to this homemade scratch art, which I will be showing you in a little bit. But this can be really fun for students using more of kind of an oil pastel under coloring and then layering on top using some of these scratching tools to reveal their actual project. So this kind of sgraffito or scratching art is really fun. Also, a double-loaded paintbrush and getting multiple colors as students make their painterly brush strokes can have some really cool effects and is a little bit more out of the ordinary. And then using painted cardboard sculptures, using different kinds of cutting techniques, piecing together techniques that take that idea out of the two-dimensional form, 2 dimensions, and turn it into something that's a bit more sculptural. You can also try paint pouring, which I know my upper elementary students love to do, and that can be really a good thing to try with different kinds of tempera or acrylic if you have those things available to you. And then also color mixing practice. So depending on what kinds of paints you get, you're gonna get different outcomes, but you can totally make a color wheel with tempera cakes and just try mixing on your paper while it's still wet to get some intermediate colors. So those might be some techniques you want to try with tempera paint and try them with your students and see which ones work best for you. So up next, we'll talk about one of my favorite beginner projects.